They chained her beneath a moon that had once blessed her birth, silver blade cold against her throat, the pack she'd bled for now, howling for her death. Seris Vale accused Wolf, about to die for crimes she never committed while her own sister smiled through crocodile tears. But here's what they didn't know. The king who'd arrive in smoke and shadow would see what they were too blind to recognize. Power doesn't bow to lies forever. Stick with me until the end of this story, because what happens when an empire built on betrayal meets a queen who refuses to stay broken will shatter everything you think you know about justice. Drop a like and comment your city below so I know my pack is listening. You're going to need to remember where you were when you heard this. The execution stone stood in the center of the clearing like a rotted tooth jutting from diseased gums. Generations of wolves had died there. Their blood had seeped so deep into the granite that no rain could wash it clean anymore. The stone didn't just kill. It remembered. Seris Vale's knees pressed against that memory now. The chains binding her wrists were iron, not silver, because her captors wanted her to feel everything. Silver would have been a mercy. Iron just hurt. Her wolf had gone silent 3 days ago. Not dead, just hiding, cowering somewhere deep in her chest where the betrayal couldn't reach. Seris didn't blame her. When your own blood turns on you, instinct tells you to run inward and never come out. The moon hung fat and full above the trees, indifferent as a god. Seris had been born under a moon like this. Her mother used to say it was a blessing. Right now it felt like the universe's longest, cruelest joke. Elder Cain stepped forward, his ceremonial robe dragging through dirt and old blood. He was 87 years old and mean as a snake with a stomachache. His eyes had gone milky with cataracts, but his voice still cut. "You stand accused of betrayal most foul," he announced to the gathered pack. His words echoed off the trees. Seduction of the Alpha, sabotage of the sacred union, crimes against the future of this pack and the bloodline that sustains it. Seris kept her eyes down. She'd learned that lesson early. Meet their gaze and they call it defiance. Lower your eyes and maybe they remember you're still human under the fur. The Alpha stood 10 feet away, arms crossed, face carved from stone. Theron Voss. 6'4" of muscle and entitlement, with a jaw that could crack walnuts and a conscience that had gone missing somewhere around puberty. He'd been promised to Evelyn for 2 years. The wedding was supposed to happen tomorrow night under this same damn moon. Evelyn. Her sister. The future queen. The liar. Evelyn stood beside Theron now, one delicate hand resting on his forearm like she owned it. Her dress was white, because of course it was. Pure as fresh snow. Innocent as a lamb. Her eyes were red from crying, but Seris knew the truth. Evelyn could squeeze out tears the way other people squeezed lemons. Practice made perfect. "She came to me," Evelyn whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Her voice broke in all the right places. She said she loved him, that she'd loved him since we were children. She begged me to step aside, a lie so smooth it could slide down a razor blade without bleeding. And when I refused, Evelyn continued, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief that probably cost more than Seris's entire wardrobe, she threatened me. Said she'd make sure the wedding never happened. Said she'd rather see Theron dead than mated to me. The crowd murmured, a low growl building into a wave. Seris felt it roll over her like nausea. She wanted to scream, wanted to stand up and shred that pretty white dress with her bare hands, wanted to grab Evelyn by her perfectly curled hair and drag the truth out of her lying mouth. But her wolf was still hiding, and without her wolf, Seris was just a 23-year-old woman in chains, kneeling in front of 300 people who'd already decided she deserved to die. Theron hadn't said a word. He stood there like a statue, face unreadable, while his future mate wept theatrical tears and his future corpse knelt in iron chains. Seris had known him her entire life. They'd grown up together, trained together. She'd seen him laugh until he couldn't breathe, seen him cry when his father died, seen him drunk and stupid and young and scared. And she'd never loved him, not the way Evelyn claimed. She'd never touched him the way the accusations suggested. But she'd thought somewhere in the stupid, optimistic corner of her heart that he might at least defend her. He said nothing. Her mother stood in the crowd. Adelaide Vale, former Luna, widow of a decorated warrior, mother of 2 daughters. She wore gray, the color of mourning. Her face was blank, empty as a house with no one home. Seris had looked for her mother's eyes a dozen times over the past 3 days. tried to find some flicker of doubt, some whisper of maternal instinct that might question whether her eldest daughter really deserved execution. Adelaide looked through her like she was glass. That was when Seris understood. This wasn't just about Theron. This wasn't even really about Evelyn's jealousy or ambition. This was about power, about bloodlines, about a family that had spent generations clawing their way toward the center of pack hierarchy, and Seris had somehow become the sacrifice that would carry them the final mile. Evelyn would marry the Alpha. Adelaide would become the Queen's mother, and Seris would become a cautionary tale whispered to young wolves about the price of stepping out of line. Elder Cain raised the silver blade. It caught moonlight and threw it back like a challenge. "The penalty for betrayal of this magnitude is death," he said, "swift and clean, so that the condemned may find peace in the next life, if not in this one, swift and clean." What a pretty way to describe having your throat opened in front of everyone you'd ever known. Seris felt her heartbeat in her temples, in her wrists. In the hollow of her throat where the blade would go, her wolf stirred for the first time in days, not to fight, but to whimper. "Do you have any final words?" Cain asked. She almost said nothing, almost let them kill her in silence. But something bitter and sharp rose in her chest, something that tasted like fury wrapped in resignation. "I'm innocent," Seris said. Her voice came out steady, stronger than she felt. "I never touched the Alpha, never threatened my sister, never betrayed this pack." The crowd didn't even pretend to listen. "You've been given your chance to speak," Cain said. His hand tightened on the blade. "May the moon have mercy on your soul." He raised the blade higher. Seris could smell the silver, could feel her wolf recoiling from it like a beaten dog. She closed her eyes. Then the night cracked open. It wasn't an explosion, wasn't thunder. It was silence that hit like a fist, the kind of quiet that happens when every living thing in a 5-mile radius suddenly decides that breathing too loud might be a fatal mistake. Seris opened her eyes. The trees at the edge of the clearing had gone still. No wind, no rustling leaves. Even the insects had shut up. The moon seemed brighter, harsher, like someone had turned up the contrast on reality. Then she saw him. He came through the smoke that wasn't there a second ago, moving like a shadow that had learned to walk upright. Black cloak, black armor, black horse that looked like it had been carved from midnight and bad intentions. The man on its back radiated authority the way a fire radiates heat, not loud, not showy, just inevitable. King Draven Morcant, sovereign of the Nightfall Dominion, the ruler every other pack told horror stories about to keep their children in line. He was younger than the stories suggested, maybe 35. Dark hair pulled back from a face that looked like it had been designed by someone who understood that beauty and danger weren't opposites. Sharp cheekbones, jaw like a blade, eyes the color of a winter storm, gray and merciless and currently locked on Elder Cain like a predator spotting prey. The horse stopped 10 feet from the execution stone. Draven dismounted in one fluid motion. He didn't rush, didn't need to. The entire clearing had frozen. Theron found his voice first. "What is the meaning of this intrusion?" Draven's eyes slid to him. The look lasted maybe 3 seconds. Theron shut up. The king walked forward. His boots made no sound on the dirt. He moved like water, like smoke, like something that existed in the space between heartbeats. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, conversational, the kind of tone you'd use to discuss the weather or ask about someone's day. "I was passing through," Draven said. He stopped in front of Seris, looked down at her with those winter storm eyes. "Heard you were having an execution. Thought I'd see what all the excitement was about." Elder Cain's face had gone the color of old cheese. "Your Majesty, this is an internal pact matter. We are honored by your presence, but nothing," Draven interrupted. Still quiet, still conversational. "I asked what she did." Cain swallowed. "She betrayed the Alpha, seduced him on the eve of his sacred union, threatened the future Luna. The evidence is—" "What evidence?" The question landed like a rock through a window. Cain blinked. The testimony of the future Luna herself, and—" "Testimony," Draven repeated. He tilted his head slightly. "So one person's word. No witnesses to the actual seduction. No physical proof. Just an accusation from someone who stands to gain considerably from this woman's death." The clearing had gone so quiet Seris could hear her own pulse. Evelyn stepped forward. Her tears had dried up fast. Your Majesty, with all respect, you don't understand the situation. My sister has always been jealous of me. She's tried to undermine me since we were children. This was simply the culmination of years of— Your sister? Draven said. He looked at Evelyn the way you'd look at a bug on your dinner plate. Interesting. So the accuser is the primary beneficiary. The condemned has no advocate. The alpha refuses to speak. And you're all in such a hurry to kill her that you didn't bother with an actual trial. He turned to Theron. The alpha's jaw was clenched so tight Seris thought she heard teeth crack. Tell me, Draven said, did you sleep with her? Theron's face went red. That's not— It's a simple question, Draven interrupted. Did you touch her? Kiss her? Anything that would constitute the seduction she's accused of? The silence stretched. Theron looked at Evelyn, at Elder Cain, at his own feet. No, he finally said. The word came out strangled. I never touched her. The crowd erupted, shouting, confusion, anger redirecting itself like a river hitting a dam. Seris felt dizzy. Her wolf was awake now, pacing in her chest, confused and cautious. Draven held up one hand. The noise died. So let me understand this correctly, he said. You're about to execute a woman for a crime the alleged victim just confirmed never happened. Is that accurate? Elder Cain's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. She threatened the future Luna, Evelyn said. Her voice had gone sharp, lost its theatrical sweetness. She said she'd destroy the wedding. That's conspiracy. That's treason against the pack. Did she threaten you? Draven asked Seris. It was the first time anyone had asked her a direct question since this nightmare started. Seris looked up at him. At this king who'd materialized out of smoke and silence to interrupt her execution for no reason she could understand. No, she said. Her voice was hoarse. I never threatened her. I never touched him. I never did any of it. Why would your sister lie? Draven asked. Seris almost laughed. The sound came out broken. Because she wants to be Luna. Because our family needs the political alliance. Because I'm in the way. Draven nodded slowly, like she'd just confirmed something he already knew. He turned back to Cain. Under the law of the Dominion, he said, and his voice had changed, gone cold and formal, edged with something that made the hair on Seris's arms stand up. An execution requires proof beyond testimony, requires a trial with advocates for both sides, requires the Alpha's direct order if the crime is against pack hierarchy. You have none of these things. Elder Cain drew himself up. With respect, Your Majesty, the Dominion's laws do not govern this pack. We are sovereign in our own territory. Are you? Draven said. It wasn't a question. He reached into his cloak and pulled out a scroll, tossed it to Cain. The elder caught it clumsily, unrolled it with shaking hands. His face went gray. That's the treaty your previous Alpha signed 12 years ago, Draven said. Section 7, subsection 3. In exchange for trade rights and protection from the Northern Raiders, your pack agreed to uphold the Dominion's standards of justice in capital cases. You want sovereignty? Fine. Give back the trade routes. Defend your own borders. But while you're enjoying the benefits of my protection, you follow my laws. The scroll fell from Cain's hands. Draven knelt in front of Seris. Up close, his eyes weren't just gray, they were silver. Mercury. The color of the moon reflected in a frozen lake. I'm invoking royal protection, he said quietly. Under Dominion law, you're now under my authority. They can't touch you. Seris stared at him. Why? Because, Draven said, standing up and turning to face the crowd, power without justice is just tyranny with better marketing. And I don't tolerate tyranny in my territory. He looked at Theron. Your silence condemned an innocent woman. Remember that when you're lying next to your new bride, wondering why your pack respects fear instead of loyalty. He looked at Evelyn. Careful what you build on lies. Foundations like that tend to collapse at the worst possible moment. He looked at Adelaide. Seris's mother. The woman who'd birthed her and raised her and stood silent while they prepared to kill her. Draven didn't say anything to her, just looked. The contempt in that look could have stripped paint. Then he bent down and with one hand snapped the iron chains like they were made of rotted rope. Can you stand? He asked Seris. She tried. Her legs shook. 3 days of kneeling had turned her muscles to water. She made it halfway up before her knees buckled. Draven caught her, lifted her like she weighed nothing, carried her to his horse, and set her on its back. The crowd was shouting now. Elder Cain was screaming about jurisdiction and authority and ancient rights. Theron looked like he'd swallowed glass. Evelyn's perfect face had twisted into something ugly and desperate. Adelaide said nothing, just watched her daughter leave with eyes as empty as the space where love used to live. Draven mounted behind Seris. His arm came around her waist, steady and sure. The horse turned. "If anyone wants to contest this," Draven said to the crowd, "you know where to find me." No one moved. The horse walked forward, through the crowd, through the smoke, into the trees. Behind them, the execution stone stood empty, its next meal snatched away. The moon watched them go, indifferent as always. Seris felt the king's heartbeat against her back. Steady, unafraid. She was shaking so hard her teeth rattled. "Why did you save me?" she whispered. Draven was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Because I've seen too many people die for being inconvenient. And because the look in your eyes reminded me of someone I failed to save a long time ago." "Who?" "Myself," he said. They rode into the darkness. Behind them, the pack that had condemned her began the long process of realizing what they'd just lost, what they'd thrown away, what they'd been too blind and too cruel to recognize. But Seris didn't look back. Not once. Some things you only survive by leaving behind completely. The forest swallowed them. The moon followed overhead, silent and watchful, and in the distance, barely visible through the trees, the mountains of the Nightfall Dominion rose like jagged teeth against the stars. Seris's old life ended at an execution stone under a merciless moon. Her new life began in the arms of a king who understood that mercy wasn't weakness. It was the most dangerous form of strength. Wung. The journey took 6 hours. Draven didn't speak much. Didn't need to. The horse knew the way. Through forests that grew darker and older with each mile, over streams that ran fast and cold, past landmarks Seris had only heard about in stories meant to scare children. The whispering pines, where the trees supposedly talked to each other in voices too low for human ears. The shattered bridge, where an ancient battle had split stone and earth. The border markers carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. They were leaving pack territory. Entering something older. Something that answered to different rules. Seris's wolf had finally stopped cowering. She sat up in Seris's chest, curious now, watching the world through their shared eyes. Testing the air, the scent of pine, of stone, of water and earth and something else, something wild and vast and unchained. Freedom, maybe, or the possibility of it. Dawn was threatening the horizon when they crested the final ridge. Seris looked down and forgot how to breathe. The Nightfall Dominion spread below them like a kingdom carved from shadow and silver. The fortress rose from obsidian cliffs, its towers reaching toward the sky like fingers. Forests surrounded it, thick and ancient, broken by rivers that caught the pre-dawn light. Mountains ringed the valley, protective and eternal. But it was the people that made her chest tighten. Even from this distance, even in the pre-dawn dark, she could see life. Movement. Lights in windows, smoke from chimneys. The fortress wasn't a tomb, it was a city, alive and breathing and real. "Home," Draven said quietly. "For better or worse?" Seris didn't know what to say. She'd spent her entire life in a pack where power meant crushing anything soft, where strength meant never showing weakness, where hierarchy was maintained through fear and punishment and the constant threat of exclusion. This place looked like it had been built by people who actually wanted to live here. They descended the ridge. As they got closer, Seris started to see details. Gardens, training yards, a marketplace, children running between buildings, laughing, an old woman sitting on a bench feeding birds, a young man chopping wood singing to himself. Normal. Devastatingly, impossibly normal. The gates opened before they arrived, guards in black and silver, but their faces weren't hard. One of them grinned at Draven. "Welcome back, Your Majesty. We were starting to think you'd gotten lost." "I don't get lost," Draven said. "I get detained." He dismounted, held his hand up to Seris. She took it, slid down from the horse. Her legs were steadier now. The iron bruises on her wrists had started to fade. Her wolf was practically pressed against her ribs, trying to see everything at once. A woman appeared from the fortress. Tall, maybe 60, with silver hair braided down her back and eyes that looked like they'd seen everything twice and still found it interesting. She wore simple clothes, no jewelry, but carried herself like royalty. She looked at Seris, then at Draven, then back at Seris. A slow smile spread across her face. "Well," she said, "this is going to be interesting." "Seris," Draven said, "this is Mara. She runs everything I'm too stupid or too stubborn to handle, which is most things." Mara snorted. "Flattery won't get you out of the paperwork you've been avoiding." She turned to Seris, extended her hand. "You look like you've had a rough week." Seris shook her hand. The woman's grip was firm, warm. That's one way to put it. "Come on," Mara said. "Let's get you fed and cleaned up. Then we can figure out what happens next." She led Seris into the fortress, through corridors carved from dark stone, but softened with tapestries and rugs and lights that made the shadows gentle instead of threatening. Through rooms where people nodded greetings to Mara and looked at Seris with curiosity instead of judgment. They ended up in a suite of rooms that overlooked the valley. Sunlight was starting to pour through the windows, turning everything gold. Mara gestured around. "This is yours. Baths through that door. Clothes in the wardrobe. Food will be up in a few minutes. Rest. Sleep. Take your time." Seris stood in the middle of the room, suddenly overwhelmed. "Why is everyone being so kind to me?" Mara tilted her head. "Why wouldn't we be? I'm nobody. A wolf from a pack that just tried to execute me for crimes I didn't commit. I have nothing to offer. No skills, no—" Mara held up a hand. "First of all, you survived. That's not nothing. Second, Draven doesn't rescue people on a whim. If he brought you here, there's a reason. And third," she stepped closer, looked Seris directly in the eyes. "This place was built by people who were thrown away by others. Rogues. Exiles. The unwanted and the inconvenient. Every person in this fortress has a story about being told they weren't good enough. So when someone shows up looking like they've been through hell, we don't ask what they can offer. We ask what they need." Seris felt something crack in her chest, a dam she'd been holding together with spite and stubbornness. Tears came fast and hard, 3 days' worth all at once. Mara didn't try to stop her, just pulled her into a hug and let her sob into her shoulder until there was nothing left. When Seris finally pulled back, Mara handed her a handkerchief. "Better?" Seris nodded, wiped her face. "I don't understand any of this." "You will," Mara said. "Give it time. For now, just rest. You're safe here. That's all you need to know." She left. Seris stood alone in the room, surrounded by luxury she'd never experienced and kindness she didn't know how to accept. She walked to the window, looked out at the valley, at the forests and rivers and mountains, at the people moving through the streets below, living their lives without fear. Her wolf pressed against her ribs, not hiding anymore, not cowering, just watching, waiting. Seris didn't know what happened next, didn't know what Draven wanted from her or why he'd saved her or what any of this meant. But for the first time in 3 days, she felt something other than terror. She felt possible. "What?" Seris woke to knocking, gentle but insistent. She'd fallen asleep in her clothes on top of the blankets, too exhausted to even consider bathing. The sun had moved, late afternoon now, judging by the angle of light. The knocking came again. She dragged herself upright, stumbled to the door, opened it. Draven stood in the hallway. He'd changed clothes. Simple black shirt, dark pants, boots, no crown, no armor. Just a man who looked tired around the edges. "Did I wake you?" he asked. "Yeah," Seris said, then realized how that sounded. "I mean, it's fine. I should probably—" He held up a hand. "You needed sleep, but I wanted to talk before rumors start spreading. Can I come in?" Seris stepped back. He walked into the room, moved to the window, looked out at the valley with his hands clasped behind his back. A king surveying his kingdom, or a man looking at something he'd built and wondering if it was enough. "I owe you an explanation," he said, "about why I did what I did." Seris sat on the edge of the bed. "You don't owe me anything. You saved my life." Draven turned. His eyes were still that winter storm silver, but up close and in better light, she could see something else in them. Weariness. old pain wearing a mask of authority. "I didn't save you out of kindness," he said bluntly. "I saved you because I needed to." Seris frowned. "I don't understand." Draven was quiet for a moment. Then he sat in the chair across from her, leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands clasped. 20 years ago, he said, I watched my father execute a woman for treason. She'd spoken out against one of his policies, publicly, loudly, made him look weak in front of the council. So he had her killed, quick trial, no real evidence, just his word against hers. He paused, looked at his hands. I was 15. I begged him to show mercy. He told me that mercy was for people who could afford it, and kings couldn't afford anything that made them look soft. He said power required hard choices, that sometimes you had to kill people who hadn't really done anything wrong, just to prove you could. Seris felt cold. What happened to the woman? She died, Draven said simply. And my father kept his power. And I learned that the world rewards cruelty as long as you call it strength. He looked up at her. When I heard about your execution, it was like watching it happen again. Different pack, different woman, same corruption wearing the mask of justice. And I thought, his voice cracked, just slightly, just enough to show the human underneath the king. I thought, not this time. This time I'm not 15 and powerless. This time I can actually do something. So you saved me to make up for the woman you couldn't save back then, Seris said quietly. Draven nodded. Selfish, isn't it? Seris almost laughed. You risked a political incident, humiliated an entire pack's leadership, and brought a complete stranger into your home because you wanted to do the right thing for once. That's not selfish, that's complicated, Draven finished. Everything's complicated when you wear a crown. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, birds were singing. Somewhere below, someone was laughing. Normal sounds from a normal world that Seris still couldn't quite believe was real. What happens now? She asked. Now, Draven said, you heal, you rest, you figure out who you are when no one's trying to kill you, and when you're ready, we'll talk about what comes next. What if I want to go back? Seris asked. The question surprised her as much as it seemed to surprise him. To that pack? Draven asked. After what they did? Not to them, Seris said. To my territory. To clear my name. To make them admit they were wrong. Draven studied her. Revenge? Justice, Seris corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Draven asked. He didn't sound critical, just genuinely curious. Seris thought about it. I don't want them to suffer, she said slowly. I just want them to see what they did, to understand that they almost killed someone innocent, to carry that weight. Draven nodded. That's justice. Revenge would be wanting them to hurt the way you hurt. And if I wanted that too? Seris asked. A small smile crossed Draven's face. Then you'd be human. Nothing wrong with that. He stood. I'll let you rest. If you need anything, ask Mara. She'll take care of you. He was almost to the door when Seris spoke again. Why did you really save me? Draven stopped, turned. For a long moment, he just looked at her, really looked, like he was seeing something he hadn't expected. Because, he said finally, the moment I saw you kneeling in those chains, I felt something I haven't felt in years. What? Hope, he said, that maybe the world hasn't beaten all the innocence out of itself yet. He left. The door closed softly behind him. Seris sat alone in the golden afternoon light, turning his words over in her mind. Her wolf stirred. Interested now. Really interested. Seris closed her eyes, took a deep breath. For the first time since this nightmare started, she felt like maybe she could actually breathe without her chest hurting. But somewhere deep in her bones, she knew this wasn't over. Evelyn wouldn't just let this go. The pack wouldn't forget. And Draven, the strange king who saved people to atone for past failures, carried secrets in his eyes that could probably fill books. Nothing this good came without a price. Seris had learned that lesson early and hard. She just had to figure out what the price was before it came due. Outside, the sun continued its arc across the sky. The Nightfall Dominion hummed with life below her window. And in a clearing 6 hours' ride away, an execution stone stood empty, waiting for its next victim. But Seris wasn't there anymore. She was here. Safe. Protected. Alive. For now, that had to be enough. But in the shadows of the fortress, in corridors Seris hadn't yet explored, Draven stood alone in his private chamber, staring at the moonstone ring he'd been carrying for 3 years, the ring meant for a queen he'd never expected to meet. And as he closed his fist around it, he felt the mate bond pulse once, twice, like a heart learning to beat again after years of silence. The mate bond wasn't supposed to feel like this. Draven had spent years studying the old texts, listening to elders drone on about destiny and cosmic connection. They made it sound mystical, beautiful. Two souls recognizing each other across the void, drawn together by forces older than language. They never mentioned that it would feel like being gutted with a rusty blade. He stood in his private chamber, the moonstone ring burning a hole in his palm, and felt the bond pulse again. Not gentle, not romantic. It hit like a fist to the sternum, stealing breath and sense. His wolf surged forward, possessive and certain, demanding he go to her immediately. Claim her, mark her, make sure every creature in this fortress and beyond knew exactly who she belonged to. Draven shoved the wolf back down, hard. This was the problem with absolute power. It taught you to take whatever you wanted. The bond was simply biology trying to override reason, instinct demanding satisfaction. He'd spent 20 years learning to control instinct. He wasn't about to lose that control now over a woman who'd just escaped one nightmare. She didn't need a king trying to drag her into another one. He put the ring back in its box, locked it in the drawer, locked the drawer for good measure. Then he poured himself a drink and tried to remember how to think like a ruler instead of a starving animal. Seris woke to voices outside her door. Not angry, not threatening. Just normal conversation. The kind people have when they're not afraid of being overheard. A woman laughing, a man responding, someone else making a joke that earned groans. She lay still for a moment, orienting herself. Soft bed, clean sheets, sunlight streaming through windows that didn't have bars, the scent of pine and stone, and something cooking that made her stomach wake up and demand attention. Right. The Nightfall Dominion, Draven's fortress, safety. The word still felt foreign. She dragged herself out of bed. Her body ached in new ways. The bruises from the chains had faded to yellow-green shadows. Her muscles were stiff from 3 days of kneeling followed by 6 hours on horseback. But underneath the pain, she felt something else. Hunger. Real hunger. Not the hollow nausea of fear. The bath called to her. She spent an hour in water hot enough to turn her skin pink, scrubbing away dirt and blood and the memory of iron chains. There were oils and soaps that smelled like lavender and mint, towels thick enough to sleep under, a mirror that showed her face without the layer of grime and terror. She looked different, thinner, older around the eyes, but alive. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a robe soft as a cloud, she found clothes laid out on the bed. Simple, but well made. Pants, shirt, boots that actually fit. No dress. No expectations of femininity, just practical clothing for someone who might need to move fast. She dressed, braided her hair, stood in front of the mirror, and barely recognized herself. The knock came precisely as she finished. Mara's voice from the other side. "You awake?" Seris opened the door. Mara stood there with a tray loaded with food. Bread, cheese, meat, fruit, something that smelled like heaven and looked like a casserole. "Thought you might be hungry," Mara said. "Can I come in?" Seris stepped back. Mara set the tray on the table by the window, gestured for Seris to sit, and proceeded to serve breakfast like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Eat," Mara said. "We can talk after." Seris ate, and ate, and ate. She couldn't remember the last real meal she'd had. 3 days in chains meant 3 days of stale bread and water when they remembered to bring it. Before that, her family had been too focused on wedding preparations to notice she was skipping meals to avoid Evelyn's company. Mara watched her with satisfaction. "Good. You were starting to look skeletal." Seris swallowed a bite of bread. "I didn't realize how hungry I was." "Starvation makes you numb to a lot of things," Mara said, "including hunger itself. Your body shuts down everything non-essential when it thinks it's dying." She leaned back in her chair. "How are you feeling?" "And I don't mean physically." Seris set down her fork. Considered lying. Decided against it. Confused. Grateful. Terrified that this is temporary. Waiting for someone to realize there's been a mistake. Mara nodded. "Normal. Give it time. Your brain needs to catch up with the fact that the danger is over. Is it? Seris asked. Over. Mara's expression shifted, became more guarded. That depends on a lot of factors. Your old pack isn't going to just forget what happened. Draven humiliated them in front of their entire community. That kind of wound festers. So they'll come after me, Seris said. It wasn't a question. They might try, Mara said, but they'd have to go through Draven first, and most people aren't that stupid. Most people, Seris repeated, but not all. Mara smiled. It wasn't a comforting smile. No, not all, which is why you're going to learn how to defend yourself. I know how to fight, Seris said. You know how to survive, Mara corrected. There's a difference. Surviving is about enduring. Fighting is about winning. We're going to teach you how to win. She stood. Finish eating. Meet me in the East Courtyard in an hour. We'll start your training. Training for what? Seris asked. Mara paused at the door. For whatever comes next. Because something always comes next. She left. Seris sat alone with her breakfast and the growing realization that safety wasn't the same thing as freedom from consequences. She'd escaped execution, but the ripples from that escape were still spreading outward. Somewhere, Evelyn was planning. Theron was brooding. The pack was reassessing. And here, in this fortress of exiles and refugees, Seris was about to learn how to be something other than a victim. Her wolf stirred, interested, ready. Seris finished her breakfast and went to find out what kind of person she was going to become. The East Courtyard was a training ground disguised as a garden, grass worn down to dirt in patches, wooden posts scarred from blade practice, a weapons rack that looked like it had survived a war, and people, dozens of them, moving through exercises with the kind of focused intensity that spoke of muscle memory and hard-earned skill. Mara waited near a clear patch of ground. Next to her stood a woman who looked like she could break bones with her thoughts. Tall, lean, with scars crossing her arms like a roadmap of violence survived. Her eyes were the color of amber, sharp and assessing. This is Kira, Mara said. She'll be teaching you hand-to-hand combat. Don't let her friendly face fool you. She's meaner than she looks. I'm standing right here, Kira said. Her voice was low, rough around the edges. And I'm exactly as mean as I look. She turned to Seris, stripped the kindness from her expression like peeling paint. You ever kill anyone? No, Seris said. You ever wanted to? Seris thought about Evelyn's face, the practiced tears, the lies delivered with the precision of a surgeon's blade. Yes. Good, Kira said. Wanting to and being able to are different things, but at least you're not starting from complete innocence. Show me your stance. Seris shifted into the fighting position she'd learned as a teenager. Feet shoulder-width apart, knees bent, hands up. Kira circled her, tapped her elbow, too high, pushed her shoulder, too tense, kicked her ankle, too narrow. Everything you learned before was wrong, Kira said. Whoever taught you was preparing you to lose prettily. I'm going to teach you to win ugly. She demonstrated. A stance that looked almost lazy. Weight distributed differently. Hands positioned to protect and strike simultaneously. Nothing flashy, nothing elegant, just efficient violence. Again, Kira said. Seris tried to mimic it, failed, tried again, got closer. They spent the next hour breaking down everything Seris thought she knew about fighting and rebuilding it from the ground up. How to move, how to breathe, how to see an opening and exploit it before the opponent realized it existed. Seris's muscles screamed. Sweat poured down her back. Her wolf paced restlessly, wanting to shift, to fight on 4 legs instead of 2. No shifting, Kira said, like she could read minds. You need to be dangerous in both forms. Right now you're only dangerous in one, which means you're only half a threat. By the time Kira called a break, Seris was shaking, not from fear, from exhaustion and exhilaration and the strange realization that pain could feel like progress. You're not hopeless, Kira said. It sounded like high praise coming from her. We'll work on this every morning. By the end of the month, you'll be able to handle yourself in a real fight. And by the end of the year? Seris asked. Kira smiled, predatory and cold. By the end of the year, you'll be the one people are afraid of. Draven watched from the battlements. He'd told himself he was just checking the training yards, making sure the new recruits were being properly integrated. performing his duties as king. All reasonable, logical explanations for why he was standing in the cold wind, watching a woman he barely knew learn how to throw a punch. The bond pulsed, a steady rhythm now, like a second heartbeat. His wolf was thoroughly unconvinced by his logical explanations. "She moves well," a voice said behind him. Draven didn't turn. He recognized the footsteps. Marcus, his second in command and the closest thing he had to a friend. 6'2" of sarcasm and tactical genius, with a beard that made him look like a bear with philosophical tendencies. "She's learning," Draven said neutrally. Marcus came to stand beside him, leaned against the battlement. "So, you gonna tell me what this is really about?" "I don't know what you mean." "You rode 6 hours into hostile territory, interrupted an execution, humiliated an entire pack's leadership, and brought back a woman you'd never met, all in the span of one night. Either you've developed a sudden interest in vigilante justice, or there's something you're not telling me." Draven kept his eyes on the courtyard below. Seris had just landed a hit on Kira. Not hard, but clean. Kira nodded approval. "I saw an injustice," Draven said. "I corrected it." "Bullshit," Marcus said cheerfully. "You see injustice every day. You don't usually rescue the victims personally. So what's different about this one?" Draven was quiet for a long moment. Below, Kira was showing Seris how to turn a failed strike into a grapple. Seris absorbed the lesson like she was starving for it. "She reminded me of someone," Draven finally said. "Who?" "Me," Draven said. 20 years ago. Kneeling in front of my father while he decided whether my humanity was worth keeping or if he should beat it out of me for the good of the kingdom." Marcus's expression softened. "That's different. You were his son, his heir. And she was her sister's competition," Draven said. "Her mother's inconvenience, her pack's scapegoat. Same power dynamic, different players. The strong crushing the weak because they can." He turned to face Marcus. "I spent my entire childhood watching my father confuse cruelty with strength. I swore when I took this crown that I'd be different, that I'd build something better. If I can't even stop one execution of one innocent woman, what's the point of any of this?" He gestured at the fortress. The valley. The kingdom spread below them. Marcus studied him. "There's more to it than that." It wasn't a question. Draven looked back at the courtyard. Seris had shifted into her wolf form now, a sleek gray creature that moved like smoke. Kira was circling her, testing her reactions. The bond pulsed, stronger this time, demanding. "Yes," Draven said quietly. "There's more to it than that." Marcus waited, patient as stone. "She's my mate," Draven finally said. The words tasted like confession. "I felt it the moment I saw her." The bond snapped into place like a trap springing shut. Marcus whistled low. "Well, that complicates things." "You think?" Draven said. "Does she know?" "No. And she's not going to. Not yet." "Why not?" Draven turned to face him fully. "Because she just escaped from a pack that tried to kill her based on one person's lies. Her sister betrayed her. Her mother abandoned her. The man she was accused of seducing stood silent while they prepared to execute her. She has exactly zero reason to trust anyone, especially not a king who claims some mystical bond gives him the right to possess her." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "So you're going to hide it? Pretend you don't feel it?" "I'm going to give her time," Draven corrected. "To heal. To figure out who she is without someone trying to control her. And when she's ready, if she's ever ready, then I'll tell her the truth. But I won't use the bond to manipulate her into something she doesn't want." "That's very noble," Marcus said. "Also very stupid." Draven laughed, harsh and short. "Probably, but I've spent my entire reign trying to be better than my father. This seems like a good place to start." "What if she never wants you?" Marcus asked. "What if she heals and decides to leave? Go somewhere far away from packs and kings and politics?" "Then she leaves," Draven said. The words hurt more than he expected. "And I let her go." "You're a better man than most," Marcus said. "Or a more cowardly one," Draven said. "Hard to tell the difference sometimes." Below, Seris shifted back to human form. Kira was talking to her, gesturing animatedly. Seris nodded, exhausted but engaged, learning, growing, becoming something new. Draven watched her and felt the bond tighten like a noose. This was the price of power. The ability to take anything you wanted and the discipline to refuse yourself. The old text said mate bonds were gifts from the universe. They never mentioned that gifts could feel like curses when timing and circumstance conspired against you. "Come on," Marcus said. "You've got a council meeting in an hour." "Trade disputes with the Northern Territories." Draven tore his eyes away from the courtyard. "Right. The endless tedium of governance." He followed Marcus back into the fortress, leaving Seris to her training. Behind him, the bond stretched like a tether, pulling him back even as he walked away. This was going to be the longest courtship in history, or the shortest, depending on how badly he managed to screw it up. 3 weeks passed. Seris trained with Kira every morning until her muscles sang with exhaustion, spent afternoons in the library, reading histories of the Dominion and the territories beyond. Evenings in the common hall, eating with the fortress residents and slowly learning their names and stories. Everyone had scars here, physical and otherwise. The woman who ran the kitchens had lost her entire family to a rogue attack. The blacksmith had been exiled from his pack for refusing to participate in a blood feud. The healer had escaped a forced mating bond by fleeing in the middle of the night with nothing but the clothes on her back. They were all refugees in one way or another, all people who'd been thrown away by the structures that were supposed to protect them. And Draven had gathered them here, built them a home, given them purpose. Seris started to understand the king better by studying his kingdom. He wasn't cruel, wasn't soft either. He ruled with a kind of pragmatic fairness that seemed to confuse people who expected either tyranny or weakness. He made decisions based on logic rather than emotion, but the logic always seemed to account for human suffering in a way that felt almost radical. She saw him in council meetings, watched through a cracked door as he negotiated trade agreements and border disputes. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, his words carried weight. People didn't argue with him often. When they did, he considered their points carefully before responding. He was nothing like Theron, nothing like her father had been, nothing like any alpha she'd ever encountered, and he was avoiding her. Not obviously. He was always polite when they crossed paths, asked how her training was progressing, made sure she had everything she needed. But he never lingered, never sought her out, maintained a careful distance that felt deliberate. It bothered her more than it should have. "You're staring," Mara said one evening. They were in the common hall. Seris had been watching Draven across the room, deep in conversation with Marcus about something that involved a map and a lot of frowning. "I'm not staring," Seris said. "I'm observing." "Is that what we're calling it?" Mara's eyes glittered with amusement. "He saved my life," Seris said. "I'm trying to figure out why." "Maybe he's just a decent person," Mara suggested. "Kings aren't decent," Seris said. "They're strategic. Everything is calculated. So what's the calculation here? Why rescue me? Why bring me into his fortress? Why train me?" Mara was quiet for a moment. "You really don't see it, do you?" "See what?" "The way he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching." Seris felt her cheeks heat. "He doesn't look at me any particular way." Mara laughed, soft and knowing. "Keep telling yourself that." Before Seris could respond, Kira dropped into the seat next to her. She'd been sparring in the courtyard, still sweaty and radiating aggression. "You're getting better," Kira said without preamble. "Less hesitation, more follow-through. In another month, you'll actually be dangerous." "High praise from you," Seris said. "Don't let it go to your head," Kira said. "You're still soft in all the wrong places. Too much thinking, not enough doing. You need to trust your instincts more." "My instincts have terrible judgment," Seris said. "Then train better instincts," Kira said, like she was suggesting Seris choose different shoes. Across the room, Draven looked up. His eyes found Seris's, held for a moment. Something passed between them. Recognition, curiosity, a question neither of them knew how to ask. Then he looked away, returned to his conversation like nothing had happened. Seris felt her wolf stir, restless, confused, wanting something she couldn't quite articulate. "I'm going to bed," she said abruptly. Standing, needing distance. "Run away if you want," Kira said, "but whatever you're avoiding is going to catch up eventually." "I'm not avoiding anything," Seris said. Mara and Kira exchanged glances, said nothing. Their silence spoke volumes. Seris left the hall, climbed the stairs to her room, locked the door behind her and leaned against it, breathing hard. This was stupid. She barely knew Draven. He was a king. She was a refugee. Whatever she thought she felt was probably just gratitude mixed with trauma and the desperate need to attach herself to the first person who'd shown her kindness. That's what she told herself. Her wolf laughed, a low, knowing sound that echoed in her bones. Seris ignored it, went to bed, spent 3 hours staring at the ceiling before finally falling into restless sleep. In his own chambers, Draven did exactly the same thing. The message arrived at dawn. Draven was already awake, had been for hours, going through reports and correspondence. The endless paperwork of empire. He heard the commotion in the courtyard, shouting, the sound of horse hooves. He descended to find a messenger collapsed against the fountain. Young wolf, barely 20, covered in mud and blood. One of his scouts from the southern border. Marcus was already there, helping the kid drink water. The messenger's hands shook. "Report," Draven said. His voice cut through the chaos. The messenger looked up, terror in his eyes. "Your Majesty, it's the Vale Pack. They're mobilizing." Draven felt something cold settle in his chest. Mobilizing for what? "They're calling it a rescue mission," the messenger said, "claiming you kidnapped one of their own. They've sent formal demands for her return." "When you didn't respond—" "I never received any demands," Draven interrupted. "They sent them to the old border outpost," the messenger said, "the one that's been abandoned for 6 months. They knew you wouldn't get them. They wanted you to ignore them so they'd have justification for war," Marcus finished. "They're looking for an excuse to invade." The messenger nodded. "They're gathering allies, other packs that are nervous about your growing influence. They're calling you a tyrant, saying you abduct innocent wolves and hold them prisoner, that you're building an empire of forced loyalty." Draven laughed. The sound had no humor in it. Forced loyalty. That's rich coming from a pack that was about to execute an innocent woman. "What are their numbers?" Marcus asked. "At least 500, the messenger said. "Maybe more. And they're bringing silver, lots of it." The courtyard had gone silent. People were gathering, drawn by the commotion. Seris stood at the edge of the crowd, her face pale. Her eyes met Draven's. Understanding dawned. "This is because of me," she said. Her voice carried across the courtyard. Draven wanted to lie, wanted to protect her from the guilt. But he'd built this kingdom on truth, and he wasn't about to abandon that now. "Yes," he said simply. Seris stepped forward. "Then give me back. Let me return. Tell them it was a misunderstanding." "Absolutely not," Draven said. The words came out harder than he intended. "They're going to war because of me," Seris said. "People are going to die because you saved me." "How is that justice?" Draven crossed the distance between them in 3 strides, looked down at her with all the authority of a king who'd made harder choices than this and survived. "They were going to war anyway," he said. "You're just the excuse they needed. Your pack has been looking for a reason to challenge the Dominion for years. They see our growth as a threat. They don't like that refugees are choosing us over them. This was always coming. You just accelerated the timeline." "So I should go back and let them kill me," Seris said, "to save your people." "No," Draven said. "You should stay here and help me prepare to defend against an invasion built on lies and cowardice." "You want justice? Help me give it to them." The courtyard erupted, people shouting suggestions, demanding action, the organized chaos of a community facing crisis. Draven held up a hand. Silence fell. "Marcus," he said, "start preparations. I want every fighter we have ready. Double the watches. Send word to our allies. If the Vale Pack wants war, we'll give them one they'll remember." He turned to Seris. "And you're going to train harder than you've ever trained in your life. Because when they come, and they will come, I want you standing on these walls. I want them to see what they tried to destroy. I want them to understand exactly what they lost when they chose fear over truth." Seris stared at him, something fierce building behind her eyes. "Okay." The word was quiet, certain. The sound of a woman finding her spine. Draven felt the bond pulse, strong and demanding. His wolf surged forward, wanting to claim, to protect, to mark her as his so thoroughly that no one would ever question who she belonged to. He shoved it down. Now wasn't the time. The messenger was being helped to the infirmary. The crowd was dispersing, energized by purpose. War was coming, and the Nightfall Dominion was preparing to meet it. Seris stood in the courtyard watching Draven issue orders with the calm precision of a man who'd done this before, who'd faced impossible odds and come out the other side. Her old life was marching toward her with swords and silver and righteous lies. Her new life was preparing to fight back, and somewhere in the middle of all of it, Seris had to figure out who she was when the choice was finally hers to make. She thought about running, about disappearing into the wilderness and letting both sides tear each other apart without her. Her wolf snarled, a sound of absolute refusal. No more running, no more hiding, no more being the victim in someone else's story. If they wanted her back, they'd have to go through her first. And in the war room, as maps were spread and strategies debated, Draven's hand unconsciously went to the drawer where the moonstone ring waited. The bond screamed at him to tell her, to claim her, to bind her to him so completely that no army could ever take her away. But kings didn't get to choose love over duty. They got to choose which sacrifice would cost them less. And Draven had already decided he'd rather lose her to her own choice than keep her through destiny's chains. War changed people. Stripped away the polite lies they told themselves about who they were and left only the raw truth underneath. Seris learned this in the 2 weeks between the messenger's arrival and the night everything fell apart. She trained until her hands bled. Kira pushed her harder than seemed survivable, turning morning sessions into full-day brutality. Hand-to-hand combat until muscle memory replaced thought. Weapons training with blades and staffs and anything that could be weaponized. Strategy sessions with Marcus where she learned to read terrain like a language and spot weaknesses in formations. Her wolf grew stronger, no longer hiding, no longer cowering. The transformation came easier now, faster, like her human skin was just a coat she could shrug off when needed. In wolf form, she was faster than most. Not the strongest, not yet, but quick enough to make strength irrelevant if she used it right. The fortress prepared for siege. Weapons were sharpened, walls reinforced, supplies stockpiled. Every person old enough to hold a weapon was given one and taught how to use it. This wasn't a military installation, it was a community. But communities under threat learned to become armies or they learned to become graves. Draven was everywhere. In the training yards, the armory, the war room, the kitchens, checking preparations, encouraging fighters, making decisions with the kind of cold clarity that came from experience Seris didn't want to imagine. He barely slept, barely ate, ran himself into the ground because that's what kings did when their people needed them. He still avoided her. Not obviously, but the distance remained, careful, deliberate, like he was afraid of something neither of them had named. The bond between them should have been obvious by now. Seris felt it every time he was near, a pull in her chest, a certainty that felt cellular. Her wolf recognized him on a level that bypassed logic entirely, but Draven gave no indication he felt the same thing. Maybe he didn't. Maybe she was inventing connections where none existed because she desperately needed to believe someone in this world actually wanted her. That's what she told herself in the hours between midnight and dawn when sleep wouldn't come and doubt ate at her like acid. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. She was falling for a king who was preparing to go to war over her existence, and she had no idea if he saw her as anything more than a political liability he was too noble to abandon. Morcant. The attack came on a Tuesday. Seris would remember that detail later. How mundane it seemed. Tuesday, like any other day. Breakfast and training and Marcus making sarcastic comments about Kira's teaching methods while Kira told him exactly where he could shove his opinions. Then the bells rang. Not the normal bells. The ones that meant breach. Invasion. Everything you've been preparing for is here. Seris was in the courtyard when it happened. She dropped into combat stance on instinct, scanning for threats. Around her, the fortress exploded into organized chaos. People running to positions, weapons being distributed, children being herded to the inner keep where stone walls were thickest. Draven appeared on the battlements. His voice cut through the noise. Positions. Now. No panic. We knew this was coming. Seris ran for the walls, took the stairs 3 at a time, reached the top and looked out at the valley below. Her breath stopped. The Veil Pack had brought an army, 500 wolves and then some, spread across the valley like a disease. Banners flying, armor glinting in the late afternoon sun, silver weapons that caught light and threw it back like promises of pain. At the front of the formation stood Theron. Even from this distance, Seris could recognize his stance. Broad shoulders, arrogant posture. The man who'd let her kneel in chains and said nothing. Next to him, mounted on a white horse that probably cost more than a house, was Evelyn, her sister. Still in white, still playing the victim. Her hair was braided with flowers like she was going to a festival instead of a war. Behind them, the pack elders. Her mother. The same people who'd gathered around the execution stone and sharpened their judgment into spectacle. They'd come to take her back. Or kill her trying. The distinction probably didn't matter much to them. Marcus appeared at Seris's elbow. His face was grim. That's a lot of silver. Seris counted the weapons. The specially forged blades that could cut through a werewolf's enhanced healing like it was nothing. The arrows with silver tips. The chains meant to bind and burn simultaneously. They came prepared, she said. They came scared, Marcus corrected. People don't bring that much firepower unless they're terrified of what they're facing. What are they scared of? Seris asked. I'm just one person. Marcus looked at her. Really looked. You're the woman who survived their execution, who disappeared into the Nightfall Dominion and came out stronger. You're proof that their system failed, that their power isn't absolute. That's terrifying to people who built their entire identity on being unchallengeable. Before Seris could respond, a rider separated from the Vale Pack formation, rode forward carrying a white flag, the universal symbol of parley. Draven appeared next to them. His face was carved from stone. Here we go? You're going to talk to them? Seris asked. I'm going to give them a chance to leave without bloodshed, Draven said. His voice was flat, empty of emotion. Whether they take it is up to them. He descended from the battlements, mounted his black horse, rode out through the gates alone, meeting the Vale Pack's messenger halfway between the two forces. Seris watched from the walls. Too far away to hear the conversation, close enough to read body language. The messenger was young, nervous, kept glancing back at his own army like he needed permission to breathe. Draven sat motionless, listening. His face gave away nothing. The conversation lasted maybe 5 minutes. Then Draven turned his horse around and rode back through the gates. The messenger fled back to his lines like something was chasing him. Draven dismounted, looked up at the battlements. His eyes found Seris. They want you, he called up. Return willingly, and they'll leave peacefully. Refuse, and they'll take the fortress by force. The courtyard went silent. Every eye turned to Seris. She felt the weight of it, the choice, the power to prevent bloodshed just by walking out the gates and surrendering herself to the people who'd already tried to kill her once. Her wolf snarled, a sound of absolute refusal that echoed in her bones. Seris looked down at Draven, at the king who'd saved her for reasons she still didn't fully understand, who'd given her sanctuary and training and the chance to become something other than a victim. What do you want me to do? She asked. The question hung in the air between them. Heavy with implications neither of them was ready to name. Draven's expression shifted, something raw breaking through the careful control. I want you to choose for yourself. For the first time in your life, you get to decide your own fate. So decide. Seris looked out at the army, at Evelyn sitting on her white horse like a princess from a corrupted fairy tale, at Theron with his borrowed authority and empty conscience, at the pack that had raised her and betrayed her in equal measure. Then she looked back at Draven, at the fortress behind him, at the people who'd gathered there, refugees and exiles and survivors who'd found something worth protecting in this kingdom of second chances. No, she said. The word came out steady. Certain. I'm not going back. The courtyard erupted, cheering, shouting, the sound of a community choosing to fight for one of their own. Draven's face didn't change, but something in his eyes softened, just for a moment, just long enough for Seris to see it. Then the moment passed. He turned to Marcus. Prepare for assault. They'll attack within the hour. Marcus nodded, already moving, already issuing orders. Seris descended from the battlements, found Kira waiting for her with weapons. A sword, a dagger, lightweight armor that would protect without restricting movement. You sure about this? Kira asked. No, Seris said honestly, but I'm doing it anyway. Kira smiled, fierce and proud. That's my girl. They took their positions on the walls. watched the Vale Pack army reorganize, shift from parley formation to attack formation, silver weapons catching the dying light. The sun touched the horizon. Long shadows stretched across the valley like fingers reaching for throats. Theron's voice carried across the distance, amplified somehow. Magic or acoustics or just the universe's cruel sense of timing. "You have one last chance," he called to the fortress. "Surrender Seris Vale and we leave in peace. Refuse and we take her by force. The choice is yours." Draven appeared on the battlements. Didn't shout. Didn't need to. His voice carried authority like some people carried weapons. "The choice was already made," he said. "You came here demanding justice while denying it to one of your own. You accuse me of kidnapping when I offered sanctuary. You bring an army to reclaim property that was never yours to own. So here's my answer." He paused. "Let the silence build. Try to take her, see what happens." The challenge hung in the air like smoke. Theron's face twisted. Even from this distance, Seris could see the rage, the humiliation, the impotent fury of a man who'd expected obedience and received defiance. "Attack!" he screamed. The army surged forward. Arrows flew first, a dark cloud against the sunset. They hit the fortress walls with sounds like hail on stone. Most bounced off. Some found gaps. Screaming started. Not much. The walls were well designed, but enough to remind everyone this was real. Seris knocked an arrow. Drew. Aimed at the advancing line, her hands were steady. Her heart was thundering. Her wolf was pacing in her chest, eager and terrified in equal measure. "Fire!" someone shouted. The fortress answered with its own volley, arrows and stones and anything that could be thrown. The Vale Pack warriors had shields. Most of the projectiles bounced off. Some didn't. The first wave hit the gates, battering rams. Magic. Concentrated force trying to break through reinforced oak. The gates held, barely. Kira was next to Seris, firing arrows with mechanical precision. Every shot found a target. Every target went down. "You're scary," Seris said. "I'm efficient," Kira corrected. "There's a difference." The battle devolved into chaos. The organized formations broke apart into individual fights. Wolves on both sides shifted, fur and fangs and claws, blood on stone, screaming in languages older than words. Seris fired until her quiver was empty. Then she drew her blade and waited for the walls to be breached. Because they would be. Numbers and silver and determination would eventually overcome stone and strategy. That's when she saw them. The figures in the eastern forest, moving between the trees. Not Vale Pack, wrong colors, wrong banners, reinforcements. But for which side? Marcus saw them too. His face went pale. No. The word was soft, horrified. The figures emerged from the trees, hundreds of them, wearing black and silver, the colors of the Nightfall Dominion. Seris felt relief flood through her. Allies. Draven had called in help. Then she saw their weapons, turned toward the fortress. Not the Vale Pack. The fortress. Her brain struggled to process it. This didn't make sense. These were Dominion fighters, their own people. Why were they... Treachery? Marcus breathed. Someone sold us out. The realization hit like a physical blow. Betrayal from within, the most ancient and effective form of warfare. Corrupt the enemy from the inside and let them destroy themselves. The Dominion fighters attacked, hit the fortress from the eastern wall where defenses were thinnest. Caught between two armies now. Vale Pack on one side, traitors on the other. The gates shattered. Silver-coated battering ram finally breaking through. Vale Pack warriors poured into the courtyard, met by Dominion defenders. The fighting moved inside, closer, more desperate. Seris abandoned the walls, ran for the courtyard. Had to find Draven, had to understand what was happening, had to... She rounded a corner and stopped. Mara stood in the corridor, but she wasn't alone. 3 Dominion warriors surrounded her, weapons drawn, pointed at her back. Mara's face was calm, resigned, like she'd been expecting this. "I'm sorry," Mara said quietly. To Seris or to herself, it wasn't clear. One of the warriors stepped forward. Older man, scarred face, dead eyes. "Orders from the council," he said. "The king's protection of the outsider threatens the Dominion's stability. She must be surrendered. If the king won't see reason, the council will remove the obstacle. Understanding crashed through Seris like cold water. This wasn't about the Vale Pack. This was about Draven's own people deciding he'd gone too far. That protecting one refugee wasn't worth risking war with neighboring territories. That sometimes you had to sacrifice the innocent to preserve the many. "Where's Draven?" Seris demanded. The warrior smiled. "Occupied. The eastern assault is keeping him very busy. They'd planned this. Used the Vale Pack's invasion as cover. Attacked from inside while Draven fought external enemies. Classic tactical maneuver. Devastatingly effective. Seris's wolf surged forward, raw instinct demanding she fight. She started to shift. Pain exploded across her back. Silver. Someone had hit her with a silver-edged weapon. Not deep enough to kill. Just enough to stop the transformation. Enough to remind her she was outmatched and surrounded. She fell. Hands caught her. Not gently. She was being dragged. Away from the fighting. Toward the gates. Toward the waiting Vale Pack army. "The Council's compliments," the warrior said. "May this sacrifice bring peace to the Dominion." Sacrifice. The word echoed in Seris's head. She was being sacrificed again. Different altar. Different executioners. Same outcome. Through the chaos and smoke, she saw him. Draven, fighting 3 warriors simultaneously. Black armor covered in blood. His sword moved like lightning. Every strike precise. Lethal. Beautiful and terrible in equal measure. He was magnificent. He was losing. 3 against 1 while more enemies poured through the breached defenses. Even kings had limits. Their eyes met across the courtyard. Just for a second. Just long enough for Seris to see his expression shatter. Draven roared. The sound wasn't human. Wasn't quite wolf. Something older. Primal. The kind of rage that had built empires and burned them down in equal measure. He fought like something possessed. Tore through his attackers with efficiency that transcended skill into something approaching artistry. Bodies fell. The space around him cleared, but he was too far away. And Seris was being dragged through the gates, into the arms of the Vale Pack warriors waiting outside. Evelyn was there, still on her white horse. Her face was triumphant, sick with victory. "Hello, sister," Evelyn said sweetly. "Did you miss home?" Seris tried to speak, tried to curse her, tried to do anything, but the words wouldn't come. The silver burn was spreading, poison in her veins. Her wolf was retreating again, hiding, cowering. Not like this. She couldn't go out like this. Helpless and broken and defeated. She thought about Draven, about the way he'd looked at her across the courtyard, the mate bond she'd felt but never acknowledged, the possibility of something that would never happen now because she was about to die in chains for the second time, and this time there would be no rescue. The Vale Pack warriors bound her wrists. Real silver this time, burning skin, stealing strength. Theron approached, looked down at her with something that might have been regret if he'd possessed the emotional capacity for it. "It didn't have to be this way," he said. "You could have just accepted your place." Seris found her voice, raw and broken, but hers. "My place was never on my knees." Theron's expression hardened. "Then you'll die on your feet." He raised his hand, gave the signal. A blade appeared. Silver. Familiar. The same one Elder Cain had held at her first execution. Apparently they'd brought it along for nostalgia. The execution stone was missing, but the intent was the same. Quick and clean. Swift justice for crimes she didn't commit. The Pack's need for control disguised as righteousness. Seris closed her eyes, thought about Draven fighting in the courtyard, about Kira's fierce pride, about Mara's kindness, about the fortress full of refugees who'd chosen to stand with her instead of giving her up for an easy peace. She'd had 3 weeks of something better, 3 weeks of training and possibility and the chance to become someone new. It was more than she'd expected, more than she probably deserved. The blade rose. Then the world exploded. Not literally, but close enough. A howl ripped through the valley. Not one wolf, dozens, hundreds. The kind of sound that made prey animals remember why they feared the dark. The Vale Pack warriors turned, confusion replacing triumph. From the forest came wolves, not Dominion, not Vale Pack, rogues, loners, exiles. Every outcast and forgotten creature within 100 miles, drawn by something primal and undeniable. They poured from the trees like water, like vengeance, like the wrath of every creature that had ever been thrown away and told they didn't matter. And at the front of that wild army, fur black as midnight and eyes burning silver, was Draven. He'd shifted, fully. His wolf was massive, twice the size of any normal wolf. Ancient bloodline, pure dominance made flesh. But that wasn't what stopped Seris's heart. It was what she felt when she looked at him. The bond. Snapping into place with force that stole breath. Not new. It had been there all along. Waiting. Hiding. Denied by both of them for different reasons. Mates. They were mates. Had been from the moment he'd seen her kneeling in chains. Maybe before. The realization hit like lightning. Like absolution. Like every question she'd never asked finding its answer. Draven's wolf locked eyes with her. Just for a second. Just long enough for her to see everything he'd been hiding. The bond. The need. The choice he'd made to let her decide her own fate even while his instincts screamed at him to claim her. Then he looked at the Vale Pack warriors. At Theron. At Eveline. And he attacked. What happened next would be talked about for generations. The night the Nightfall King became something legends were built from. He tore through the Vale Pack lines like they were made of paper. Not just him. The rogue army followed, hundreds of wolves fighting for a king who'd never asked for their loyalty but earned it anyway by being the only alpha in living memory who protected the broken instead of breaking them further. The Vale Pack formation collapsed. Warriors ran. Some fought. Most died. The ones who survived would carry scars that went deeper than flesh. Theron tried to rally his forces, tried to turn the tide through sheer force of will. Failed. Got dragged down by 3 rogues who'd probably spent years nursing grudges against pack alphas who thought dominance meant cruelty. Eveline's white horse bolted, threw her into the mud. Her white dress was ruined, her carefully constructed victim narrative shattered by the reality of consequences catching up. She scrambled to her feet, tried to run. Seris, still bound, still poisoned by silver, still kneeling in the dirt, watched her sister flee. Felt nothing. No satisfaction. No rage. Just empty acknowledgement that some people spent their entire lives running from the truth and died exhausted. The battle ended. Not gradually. Suddenly. The Vale Pack broke. Completely. Survivors fled into the forest, scattered, defeated. Silence fell, heavy and absolute. The kind that happens when violence stops, and everyone has to remember how to exist in its absence. Draven shifted back to human form, stood naked and covered in blood that mostly wasn't his. Someone threw him a cloak. He wrapped it around his waist, crossed the battlefield to where Seris knelt. He broke the silver chains with his bare hands, lifted her, held her against his chest like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Seris felt the bond singing between them. Undeniable now. Impossible to ignore. "You're my mate," she whispered. Draven's expression cracked. Everything he'd been holding back flooding through. "I know. How long have you known?" "Since the execution stone," he said. "Since the moment I saw you kneeling there waiting to die. The bond snapped into place and I thought..." He stopped, swallowed hard. "You thought what?" Seris asked. "That I'd finally found something worth protecting and I was already too late to save it." "But you did save it," Seris said. "You saved me." Draven looked at her. Really looked. Silver eyes burning with everything he'd denied himself. "I gave you a choice. That's not the same thing as saving." "It is to me," Seris said. Around them, the courtyard was being secured. The traitors from inside the fortress were being rounded up. The council members who'd ordered her surrender. The warriors who'd sold out their king for promises of safety from the Vale Pack. Marcus appeared. His face was grim. "We have a problem." Draven didn't look away from Seris. "What kind of problem?" "The kind where half your council just committed treason and the other half is demanding an explanation for why you risked the entire Dominion for one refugee." Draven finally looked at Marcus. "Tell them I'll provide answers in the morning. Tonight I have more important things to do." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Such as?" Draven's arms tightened around Seris. "Such as making sure my mate doesn't die from silver poisoning while I was too busy fighting a war." Marcus's expression shifted. Understanding, acceptance. About damn time. He left. Draven carried Seris toward the fortress, through the courtyard, past the staring survivors, up the stairs, to chambers she'd never seen, his private rooms. sparse and functional with a bed big enough for a king and the loneliness that came with crowns. He laid her down gently, called for the healer. An old woman appeared with medicine and competence. She cleaned the silver burns, applied salves that smelled like herbs and magic, wrapped Seris in bandages and instructions. Rest, the healer said. The silver will work its way out of your system in a few days. Until then, no shifting, no strenuous activity. And drink this. She handed Seris a cup of something that smelled like death and tasted worse. Seris drank it, felt warmth spread through her veins. The pain receded. Not gone, just manageable. The healer left, Draven and Seris alone in the growing dark. Your council is going to demand I leave, Seris said quietly. My council is going to learn that their opinions matter right up until they conflict with my judgment, Draven said. His voice was hard. King voice. The tone that ended arguments. They were right, though, Seris said. I am a threat to the Dominion's stability. My presence started a war. Your presence exposed cowards and traitors, Draven corrected. The war was always coming. You just made it arrive sooner and made sure we knew who our real enemies were before they could strike from the shadows. He sat on the edge of the bed, looked at her with eyes that held empires in exhaustion. I should have told you, he said, about the bond, about what I felt the moment I saw you. But you just escaped one cage. I didn't want to trap you in another one, even if that cage was destiny. Seris reached for his hand, found it, held it. You gave me a choice. That's more than anyone else has ever given me. And now? Draven asked. Now that you know? Now that the bond is acknowledged and undeniable? What do you choose? Seris looked at this king who'd saved her twice, who'd given her sanctuary and weapons and the chance to become dangerous, who'd fought an army to keep her safe while his own council tried to sell her out, who'd denied himself the mate bond because he wanted her to choose him freely. The answer was obvious, had been for weeks. She'd just been too afraid to see it. I choose you, she said simply. Draven's expression shattered, rebuilding into something raw and honest and so full of need it hurt to look at. He kissed her. Not gently, not carefully, with all the desperation of a man who'd been starving and finally found sustenance. Seris kissed back, tasted blood and smoke, and the promise of something permanent. The mate bond flared, bright and binding, irrevocable. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. Two people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and chosen each other anyway. What happens now? Seris whispered. Now, Draven said. We rebuild. Deal with the traitors, fortify the kingdom, prepare for whatever comes next, together. Together, Seris repeated. The word felt like a promise, like a weapon, like hope sharpened into something dangerous. Outside, the fortress was cleaning up the dead, tending the wounded, processing prisoners and traitors, and the devastating cost of victory. The council would demand answers. Allies would question judgment. Enemies would see weakness in mercy and strength in cruelty. But in this room, in this moment, none of that mattered. Just two people who'd survived betrayal and execution and war, who'd found each other despite every obstacle, who'd chosen love when logic screamed at them to choose survival. Seris fell asleep in Draven's arms. Safe, protected, home. But in the dungeons beneath the fortress, among the captured traitors and defeated enemies, Eveline sat in her cell and smiled, because she'd been caught but not broken, defeated but not destroyed, and she still had one card left to play, one secret that would shatter everything, one truth that would make Seris understand that some betrayals run deeper than blood, and some monsters wear the faces of the people you trust most. The game wasn't over. It had only just begun. Dawn came too early and brought consequences with it. Seris woke wrapped in Draven's arms, her body still aching from silver burns and the aftermath of battle. For a moment she let herself exist in the warmth and safety of his presence. The mate bond hummed between them, steady and sure, like a second heartbeat. Then reality crashed through the door. Marcus didn't knock, just entered with the kind of urgency that meant the world was on fire and everyone needed to know about it immediately. We have a situation, he said. Draven was awake instantly. The transition from sleep to full alertness happened in a heartbeat. Kings didn't get the luxury of groggy mornings. What kind of situation? The kind where the council is calling for an emergency session and half the fortress wants your head on a pike for risking their lives over a refugee. Marcus's eyes flicked to Seris. No offense. None taken, Seris said. She'd heard worse. Draven sat up. His bare chest was covered in bruises and cuts from yesterday's fighting. Some were already healing. Others would leave scars. Tell the council I'll meet them in an hour. They're demanding you meet them now, Marcus said, and they're not requesting. They're demanding. There's a difference. The air in the room changed, went cold. Seris felt Draven's wolf rise to the surface, not fully, just enough to remind everyone what lived beneath the human skin. Let them demand, Draven said quietly. I'll meet them when I'm ready. Not before. Marcus nodded. Your funeral. I'll tell them you're busy governing and they can wait. He left. Draven stood, started dressing, black pants, black shirt, the armor of a king facing his own people's judgment. You should stay here, he said to Seris. This is going to get ugly. I'm the reason it's ugly, Seris said. I should be there. Draven turned. His eyes were storm gray and uncompromising. You don't owe them an explanation. You didn't ask to be rescued, didn't ask to start a war. You were kneeling in chains waiting to die, and I made a choice. My choice. My consequences. Our consequences, Seris corrected. The bond makes them ours now. Draven's expression softened, just slightly, just enough. You don't have to face them. I want to, Seris said. She stood, ignored the pain screaming through her muscles, found clothes, started dressing. I spent my entire life letting other people decide my fate. I'm done with that. If they're going to judge me, they can do it to my face. Draven watched her, something fierce and proud flickering in his eyes. You're going to be a terrifying queen. The word hit like a physical thing. Queen. Seris hadn't let herself think that far ahead, hadn't processed what being Draven's mate actually meant in practical terms. I'm not queen material, she said. You survived an execution, escaped a corrupt pack, trained yourself into a warrior in 3 weeks, and chose to stay when leaving would have prevented a war. You're exactly queen material. You just don't know it yet. He crossed to her, took her hands. The mate bond flared between them. Whatever happens in that council chamber, he said, know this. I don't regret saving you. I don't regret bringing you here. I don't regret any of it, and I never will. Seris kissed him, quick and fierce, a promise sealed in contact. Then, let's go face the consequences. Thus, the council chamber was a circular room carved from black stone. No windows, no decorations, just stone and torchlight and the accumulated weight of every difficult decision ever made within these walls. The council sat in a semicircle. 12 members, 11 now, since one had been arrested for treason yesterday. Their faces ranged from hostile to carefully neutral. None looked happy. Draven entered first. Seris followed a step behind. Marcus took up position by the door. Guards lined the walls. This wasn't a conversation. It was a trial. Elder Hrothgar stood. He was the oldest council member, 80-something with a beard like a snowdrift and eyes sharp enough to draw blood. He'd been part of the Dominion since before Draven was born. Your Majesty, Hrothgar said. His tone was formal, cold. We gathered to discuss yesterday's events and their implications for the Dominion's future. Discuss away, Draven said. He remained standing. Seris stood beside him. Hrothgar's jaw tightened. You risked this entire kingdom for one outsider. Started a war that cost 17 Dominion lives. Exposed us to traitors within our own ranks. All for a woman you'd never met. I saved an innocent person from execution, Draven said. That's not a crime. That's basic humanity. Humanity is a luxury kings cannot afford, another council member said. A woman named Celeste. Mid-50s, sharp features, sharper politics. Your father understood that. My father was a tyrant who confused fear with respect, Draven said flatly. I'm not him. No, Hrothgar said. You're worse. Your father was predictable. Cruel, yes, but consistent. We knew where we stood with him. You? You're erratic, sentimental. You make decisions based on emotion rather than strategy. I make decisions based on what's right, Draven corrected. Right according to whom? Celeste demanded. You. One man's morality imposed on an entire kingdom? That's not leadership. That's dictatorship dressed in noble intentions. The council murmured agreement. Seris felt the walls closing in. These people weren't here to listen. They'd already decided. This was just the formality before the sentence. You want to know the real problem? Hrothgar said. It's not that you saved her. It's that you brought her here, made her part of the Dominion, claimed her as your mate. He looked at Seris, real hatred in his eyes. She's a liability, a weakness. Every enemy we have will target her to get to you. Every decision you make will be compromised by the need to protect her. You've handed our enemies a blade and pointed it at your own throat. Then they can try to use it, Draven said. His voice had gone quiet. Dangerous. See how far they get. This isn't a joke, Celeste snapped. The Vale Pack will regroup. They'll come back with allies. Other packs who see your protection of an exile as proof you're soft, weak, unfit to lead. Let them come, Draven said. We'll deal with them the same way we dealt with yesterday's invasion. At what cost? Hrothgar demanded. How many more Dominion lives are you willing to sacrifice for your mate? 10? 100? All of us? The question hung in the air like smoke. Seris felt sick. She'd known there would be consequences, hadn't fully processed how deep they ran. These people weren't wrong. Her presence did make Draven vulnerable, did put the entire kingdom at risk. Maybe she should leave, disappear into the wilderness, remove the problem before it consumed everything. Her wolf snarled, a sound of absolute refusal. Draven's hand found hers, squeezed, grounding her. You want me to choose, he said to the council, between my mate and my kingdom. Yes, Hrothgar said simply. Then here's my answer, Draven said. I choose both. The council erupted, shouting, protests, demands for sanity. Draven's voice cut through it like a blade. You think the Dominion is strong because of fear? Because we crush anyone who threatens us? You're wrong. We're strong because we're the only kingdom in living memory that doesn't throw away people the moment they become inconvenient. He gestured at the fortress beyond the chamber walls. Half the people in this kingdom are refugees, exiles, outcasts, people other packs discarded like garbage. We took them in, gave them purpose, built something worth protecting. That's our strength. Not our walls, not our weapons. Our willingness to be better than the cruelty surrounding us. That's idealism, Celeste said, not strategy. It's both, Draven said. And it works. We're 3 times the size we were 10 years ago. Our territory has expanded. Our trade routes are secure. We've gone from a minor kingdom to a legitimate power. Why? Because people choose us. They come here voluntarily because they know we won't betray them the moment politics demand it. He looked at each council member in turn. You want me to abandon Seris to prove I'm strong enough to lead? Fine. I'll abandon her. Right after I abandon every refugee, every exile, every person who came here trusting that we were different, that we actually meant the promises we made. His voice had gone cold. You want that kingdom? The one built on expediency and selective loyalty? You can have it, right after you find a new king, because I won't rule it. Silence. Heavy and absolute. Hrothgar's face had gone pale. You're threatening to abdicate? I'm promising to, Draven said. You want me to choose between my mate and my crown? I choose my mate. Find someone else to rule your kingdom of cowards. The temperature in the room plummeted. This wasn't a negotiation anymore. It was a coup. Draven had just flipped the board and scattered all the pieces. You can't abdicate, Celeste said. Her voice shook. The kingdom needs you. The kingdom needs a leader who keeps his promises, Draven corrected. I promise to build something better. I promise to protect the people who came here seeking sanctuary. I keep my promises, all of them, even when it's inconvenient. He turned to leave. Seris followed. Wait, Hrothgar said. The word came out strangled. Draven stopped. Didn't turn around. What do you want from us? Hrothgar asked. I want you to remember why we built this kingdom in the first place, Draven said. I want you to remember that power without principle is just tyranny with better marketing. And I want you to trust that I know what I'm doing. He left. Seris followed. The council sat in stunned silence behind them. They made it halfway down the corridor before Seris grabbed Draven's arm, spun him around. You can't abdicate, she said. This kingdom needs you. This kingdom needs someone who won't compromise on its founding principles, Draven said. If that's not me anymore, then someone else should lead. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, Seris said. Her voice was shaking. You've spent your entire life building this place, making it work. You can't just walk away because your council is being short-sighted. Watch me, Draven said. No, Seris said. She stepped closer, looked up at him with all the fury of someone who'd just watched the man she loved threaten to destroy himself. You want to prove you're better than your father? Then be better. Don't run when things get hard. Don't abandon your people because they're scared and stupid. Lead them. Show them why your way works. And if they won't follow? Draven asked. Then make them, Seris said. You're the king. Act like it. Draven stared at her, something shifting behind his eyes. Then he laughed, low and rough. You've been here less than a month and you're already giving me orders. Someone has to, Seris said. You're too busy being noble and self-sacrificing to see straight. Marcus appeared around the corner. Perfect timing as always. He looked between them. Do I want to know what happened in there? I threatened to abdicate, Draven said. Of course you did, Marcus said, because that's a perfectly rational response to political pressure. I thought so, Draven said. You're both idiots, Seris said. She was shaking now, not from fear, from adrenaline and rage and the overwhelming sense that she'd just watched something crucial almost slip away. Marcus looked at her, then at Draven, then back at her. She's right, you know. You are being an idiot. Draven's expression darkened. I'm not going to... You're going to shut up and listen, Marcus interrupted, because I've been your second for 15 years and I've never seen you this stupid. He stepped closer. You want to know what your father would have done? He would have killed Seris himself, publicly, made an example, proven he couldn't be manipulated by sentiment. Is that the king you want to be? No, Draven said quietly. Then stop acting like the only options are complete capitulation or complete abandonment, Marcus said. You're a king. Find a third option. That's what you're good at. Draven was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working, mind processing. What if there is no third option? He finally asked. Then you make one, Seris said. The way you've been making them your entire reign. She took his hand, felt the mate bond pulse between them. You saved me because you saw injustice and refused to tolerate it. That's not weakness. That's strength. Don't let them convince you otherwise. Draven looked at her, really looked. His expression cracked, rebuilding into something harder, more determined. You're right, he said. Both of you. I've been so focused on proving I'm not my father that I forgot how to actually lead. He straightened. The shift was visible. King posture. Authority settling back into place like armor. Marcus, he said, call the council back. Tell them we're not finished. Marcus grinned. Now you're thinking like a king. The council reconvened an hour later. This time, Draven didn't wait for them to speak. Here's what's going to happen, he said. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Seris stays. She's my mate and your future queen. Anyone who has a problem with that can leave. Now, I'll give you 60 seconds to decide. He looked at his timepiece, waited. No one moved. Hrothgar's face was red. Celeste looked like she'd swallowed glass, but no one left. Good, Draven said. Now that we've established that, let's talk about the real problem. We have traitors in our ranks. People who sold us out to the Vale Pack. People who thought sacrificing an innocent woman was acceptable collateral damage. He gestured to the guards. Bring them in. The doors opened. The arrested council member was dragged in, along with 7 others. Warriors who'd attacked from the inside. People Seris recognized from the fortress. Faces she'd seen in the common hall. Training yards. Normal people who'd made the choice to betray everything for promises of safety. These people, Draven said, decided that protecting one refugee wasn't worth the risk of war. They made a deal with the Vale Pack. Hand over Seris and the invasion stops. Simple, clean, practical. He walked along the line of prisoners. Each one avoided his eyes. The problem with practical solutions, Draven continued, is that they often require you to compromise your principles, to decide that some people matter more than others, that some lives are worth protecting and others are acceptable losses. He stopped, turned to face the council. That's not the kingdom I built. That's not what we stand for. We protect people. All people. Even when it's hard. Even when it's dangerous. Even when it costs us. What about when it costs us everything? Hrothgar asked. His voice was quieter now. Less hostile. More genuinely afraid. Then we pay the price, Draven said. Because the alternative is becoming the thing we swore we'd never be. A kingdom that protects only the convenient and sacrifices the rest. The council was silent. Here's my offer, Draven said. The traitors face trial. Real trial. With advocates and evidence and actual justice. We fortify our defenses, prepare for the next attack, because there will be a next attack. And when it comes, we stand together. All of us. No more internal division, no more questioning loyalty. We're either a kingdom or we're a collection of cowards pretending to be one. And if we lose, Celeste asked, then we lose having tried to be better, Draven said. I can live with that. Can you live with the alternative? Winning by becoming exactly like our enemies? The silence stretched. Then Hrothgar stood. I've served this kingdom for 40 years, he said. Watched it grow from a refugee camp into an empire. You're right. We've always been the place people ran to when everywhere else failed them. If we abandon that now, we abandon everything that makes us worth defending. He looked at Seris. I don't like you. Don't trust you. Think you're a complication we don't need, but I trust him. He pointed at Draven. And if he says you're worth the risk, then I'll stand with that decision. One by one, the other council members stood. Some grudgingly, some with visible relief, but they stood. Draven nodded. Good. Now let's get to work. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation. The fortress transformed into a military installation. Every able-bodied person trained. Defenses were reinforced. Weapons stockpiled. Scouts sent to monitor the Veil Pack's movements and report back. The intelligence they brought was grim. The Veil Pack was regrouping, calling in favors, building alliances with other territories nervous about Draven's growing power. What had started as a rescue mission had evolved into something bigger, a coalition of packs united by fear of change and nostalgia for simpler hierarchies. They were coming. Not just the Veil Pack, an army of traditionalists who saw the Nightfall Dominion as a threat to the established order. Seris trained harder than ever. Her wolf was fully awake now, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. The silver burns had healed, left scars but restored strength. Kira pushed her past limits she didn't know existed. You're going to need to kill someone soon, Kira said one morning. In practice, you hesitate. In real combat, hesitation gets you dead. I've never killed anyone, Seris said. You will, Kira said. It's not a maybe, it's a certainty. The only question is whether you'll freeze when it happens, or whether you'll survive it. How do I make sure I survive it? Seris asked. Kira looked at her. Really looked. You remember why you're fighting, not for glory, not for revenge, for the people behind you who can't fight for themselves. That's what makes killing bearable, knowing it's necessary. Seris thought about that a lot in the days that followed, about necessity, about the difference between murder and survival, about how thin the line was and how easily you could cross it without meaning to. Draven found her on the battlements one night. The full moon hung overhead, fat and luminous, indifferent to the violence being planned beneath it. You ready for this? He asked. No, Seris said honestly. Are you? I've been ready for this my entire life, Draven said. War is what kings are built for. It's the one thing I know how to do well. You do other things well, Seris said. Draven smiled, sad and tired. Name one. You build things, Seris said. Communities, safety, hope. Your father destroyed, you create. That's the difference. My father kept people alive, Draven said. I'm not sure I can say the same after this is over. The weight of leadership sat heavy on his shoulders. Seris could see it, the burden of knowing that every decision he made would result in people living or dying, that there were no good choices, only less terrible ones. What happens if we lose? She asked. We don't lose, Draven said. It wasn't bravado, just certainty. But if we do? Draven looked at her, silver eyes reflecting moonlight. If we lose together. That's better than most people get. The mate bond hummed between them. Seris leaned into him, felt his arm come around her shoulders. Two people standing on a wall waiting for war, finding comfort in shared presence. I love you, she said. The The words surprised her. She hadn't planned them. They just appeared, true and irrevocable. Draven went still. Then his arm tightened. I love you too. Have since the moment I saw you kneeling in chains and decided that the world needed to be different. They stood there as the moon tracked across the sky, as the fortress settled into uneasy sleep. As scouts returned with reports of armies gathering in the south, the war was coming. Everyone knew it, felt it, prepared for it. What no one knew was how it would end. Whether the Dominion would stand or fall. Whether love and principle could actually defeat pragmatism and fear. Seris didn't have answers. Just determination. Just the certainty that she wasn't going back. Wasn't kneeling in chains ever again. Wasn't letting anyone decide her fate without her input. If they wanted her, they'd have to take her. And she'd make them pay for every inch. What? The attack came 3 days later. Not at dawn, like tradition suggested. At noon, when the sun was highest and shadows were shortest and there was nowhere to hide, the horns sounded, different tone than last time, longer, more urgent. This wasn't a raid. This was an invasion. Seris was in the training yard when it happened. She dropped her practice sword, ran for the armory, found her weapons, real weapons, sharp and lethal and ready. Kira appeared beside her. You remember what I taught you? Kill them before they kill me, Seris said. Close enough, Kira said. She grinned, feral and eager. Try not to die. I've put too much work into you to lose you now. They ran for the walls, took positions, looked out at the valley below. The army was massive, easily 1,000 warriors, maybe more. The Vale Pack at the center, flanked by allies from a dozen other territories. Banners flying, armor gleaming, silver weapons glinting in the midday sun. At the front rode Theron, still playing alpha, still pretending he was anything other than a coward in expensive armor. But it was the figure beside him that made Seris's blood freeze. Evelyn, not captured, not defeated, free, armed, riding a black horse now instead of white. Her face was hard. All the practiced sweetness burned away, leaving only hatred. How? Seris breathed. Marcus appeared. His face was grim. She escaped 2 days ago, killed 3 guards doing it. We've been searching, but... He gestured at the army below. Looks like we found her. Draven climbed onto the battlements, looked out at the assembled forces. His expression didn't change. Didn't show fear or surprise or anything. Just cold assessment. They brought friends, he said. More than friends, Marcus said. That's every traditionalist pack within 200 miles. They're serious about this. So are we, Draven said. He raised his voice, projected it across the fortress. Everyone heard yesterday's arguments, heard the council question whether one person was worth defending. Well, here's your answer. This army came because we refused to compromise our principles, because we said some things matter more than convenience. Are we still sure we meant it? The fortress roared, not words, just sound, agreement, defiance, the collective voice of a community that had chosen its values and was ready to die for them. Draven nodded. Then let's show them what happens when you mistake mercy for weakness. The gates opened, not to surrender, to meet them. This is it, Seris thought. The moment everything changed, win or lose, live or die. But hers. Finally, completely hers. She looked at Draven. He looked back. The mate bond sang between them, bright and unbreakable. Ready? He asked. No, she said. But I'm doing it anyway. That's my queen, Draven said. Baghdad. The armies met in this valley as the sun reached its apex, and Evelyn's voice carried across the battlefield with words that would shatter everything Seris thought she knew about her own past. The secret. The lie. The truth that had been buried for 23 years. And when Evelyn spoke it aloud, Draven's hand found his sword, and Seris's wolf surged forward, and the war that had been brewing exploded into violence that would reshape the future of every kingdom watching. Evelyn's voice cut through the valley like a blade through flesh. You want to know the real reason they tried to execute her? Not because she seduced anyone. Not because she threatened me. Because she's not supposed to exist. The battlefield went silent. 1,000 warriors holding their breath, waiting. Seris felt ice spread through her veins. Her wolf went still, cautious, sensing something terrible approaching. What are you talking about? Draven called across the distance. His hand was on his sword. Ready, Evelyn laughed. The sound was broken glass and old wounds. Our mother had an affair, 24 years ago, with a rogue, a nobody, some wandering wolf who passed through our territory and left before anyone knew what he'd planted. No, Seris whispered, but her wolf was silent, not denying, not confirming, just listening. Seris isn't father's daughter, Evelyn continued. She's a bastard, illegitimate, tainted blood in a family that prides itself on purity. Mother kept the secret, raised her like she belonged, but the elders knew. They've always known. They were just waiting for the right excuse to get rid of the evidence. The words landed like stones, each one heavier than the last. Seris tried to process it, tried to find the lie. Couldn't, because it made sense. Why her mother had watched the execution without protest, why the pack had been so eager to believe Evelyn's accusations, why she'd never quite fit, never quite belonged. She wasn't pack, had never been pack, just a mistake hidden in plain sight until she became too inconvenient to ignore. That's a lie, Draven said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Evelyn asked. Ask Adelaide. Oh wait, you can't. She's dead. Threw herself off a cliff 3 days ago. Guilt, they said. I think it was relief. Finally free of the burden of pretending the bastard was hers. Seris couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her mother was dead, her entire identity was a lie. Everything she'd believed about herself was built on deception. So you see, Evelyn continued, this isn't about one refugee. It's about blood, about legacy, about making sure the weakness doesn't spread. She's contaminated, always has been, and you've bound yourself to her through the mate bond, made her your queen, tied your kingdom's future to corrupted bloodlines. The army behind Evelyn roared approval. This was what they'd come for. Not justice. Validation. Proof that their prejudices were righteous, that blood mattered more than character, that some people were born lesser and should stay that way. Draven's hand tightened on his sword. His wolf was visible beneath his skin, barely contained rage looking for a target, but Seris felt nothing, just cold, empty, numb. She'd spent her entire life fighting to prove she belonged. Turned out she never had, never would. Was born wrong and stayed wrong no matter how hard she tried. Maybe Evelyn was right. Maybe she was the weakness, the contamination, the thing that didn't belong. Her wolf stirred. Not agreement, fury. Because here's what Seris understood in that moment. What her wolf had always known, but she'd been too afraid to accept. Blood didn't mean anything. Legacy was just a story people told themselves to feel important. She wasn't weak because her father was a rogue. She was strong because she'd survived people trying to kill her for crimes she didn't commit. Being a bastard didn't make her less. It made her free. She stepped forward, away from Draven, away from the fortress, into the space between armies. You're right, she called to Evelyn. I'm not legitimate, not pack-born, not the daughter of the man who raised me. I'm the product of an affair and a lie, and 23 years of shame. Evelyn smiled, victory in her eyes. And I don't care, Seris continued. The smile faltered. You think that diminishes me? Seris asked. You think knowing my father was a rogue makes me less than you? You're wrong. It makes me more. Because I didn't inherit my strength. I built it. Didn't coast on bloodlines and family names. Earned every single piece of who I am through surviving people like you. She gestured at the army, at Theron and the pack elders and every warrior who'd come to destroy her. You brought 1,000 fighters to kill one bastard. You needed allies and silver and overwhelming force because you're terrified of what I represent. Not corruption. Freedom. The proof that your entire system is built on lies. That blood doesn't determine worth. That the people you throw away can become stronger than the ones you keep. Her wolf surged forward. The transformation was instant, brutal. Her bones restructured. Fur erupted. In seconds, she stood on 4 legs. Not gray anymore. Black. Pure black. The color of midnight. Of shadows. Of every dark thing that had ever been feared. And she was massive. Larger than any wolf on the battlefield. Larger than Draven. Ancient bloodline expressing itself fully for the first time. Not pack legacy. Something older, wilder, unchained. The Moon Sovereign. The legends were true. Power that didn't come from pedigree, but from the moon itself. From the wild. from the spaces between civilization where strength was earned through survival instead of inherited through names. Seris threw her head back and howled. It wasn't sound, it was command. Primal authority that bypassed thought and spoke directly to the wolf in every creature present, and they answered. From the forests came rogues, hundreds of them, thousands, every exile and outcast and forgotten wolf within 100 miles, drawn by something deeper than loyalty, recognition, the call of someone who understood what it meant to be thrown away and refused to stay broken. They poured from the trees like water, like vengeance, like the collective rage of every creature that had been told they didn't matter. The traditionalist army faltered, confidence cracking. They'd come expecting easy victory over a refugee and her soft-hearted king. Found themselves facing an army of the rejected, led by a bastard who'd transformed rejection into power. This is the part where people's true nature reveals itself, where the comfortable discover that cruelty has consequences, where the powerful learn that dominance only lasts until the dominated decide to stop accepting it. History turns on moments like this, when the narrative shifts, when the victims become the victors and the old order realizes too late that they've created their own destruction. Theron screamed orders. The traditionalist army tried to organize, form defensive lines, prepare for impact. Too late. The rogue army hit like a tsunami. No formations, no strategy, just raw fury and the kind of fighting that comes from having nothing left to lose. They tore through the traditionalist lines like paper, scattered them, broke them. Draven shifted. His massive black wolf joined the fray. Not leading, fighting beside king and queen as equals. The mate bond singing between them in the chaos. Seris found Eveline in the mess. Her sister had shifted too. Sleek white wolf, beautiful and deadly. They circled each other while war raged around them. "This is your fault," Eveline's eyes said. "All of this. You should have died quietly." Seris's wolf responded without words. "I survived. That's my only crime." They clashed, teeth and claws, fur and fury. Sisters who'd never really been sisters, rivals who'd been manufactured by circumstance and cruelty. Eveline was skilled, well-trained, fought with precision and technique. Seris fought like she'd lived, desperate, determined, refusing to quit even when losing seemed inevitable. The difference was enough. Seris got her jaws around Eveline's throat, felt the pulse beneath fur. One bite. That's all it would take. Justice. Revenge. The end of the person who'd started this nightmare. Her wolf wanted it, demanded it, blood for blood. But Seris hesitated, because killing Eveline wouldn't fix anything, wouldn't erase the lies, wouldn't bring back the mother who'd chosen death over truth, wouldn't change the fact that they'd both been victims of a system that valued blood over everything. Eveline had been raised to compete, taught that only one sister could matter, forced into a hierarchy that demanded she destroy anything threatening her position. She was cruel because cruelty was survival in the world their pack had built. Seris released her, stepped back. Eveline scrambled to her feet, confusion in her eyes. "Why?" "Because I'm not like you," Seris's posture said. "I don't have to kill you to prove I'm stronger." She turned away, left Eveline alive and broken in the mud. Some victories were won through mercy, through proving you were better than the violence that shaped you. The battle was ending, not through total destruction, through collapse. The traditionalist army was fleeing, running, their conviction shattered by the reality of fighting people who had nothing left to lose. Theron was down. Not dead, just beaten, surrounded by rogues who'd suffered under alphas exactly like him. They were discussing what to do with him. The conversation involved words like exile and humiliation and making an example. Draven appeared beside Seris, both in human form now, naked and covered in blood and breathing hard. "You let her go," he said. "Yes," Seris said. "Why?" "Because killing her would have made me like them," Seris said. "And I've spent too long proving I'm different to throw it away on revenge." Draven looked at her, something shifting in his expression, becoming softer, prouder. "That's why you're going to be a better queen than anyone expects," he said. The aftermath was uglier than the battle. Sorting prisoners, tending wounded, counting dead. 17 Dominion fighters lost in the first assault, 23 in the second, each one a name, a story, a hole in someone's life that would never be filled. Seris walked among the fallen, learned their names, memorized their faces. These people had died defending her right to exist. The least she could do was remember them. The council reconvened 3 days later. Different tone this time, subdued, respectful. They'd watched her transform into the moon's sovereign, watched her spare her sister when revenge was justified, watched her lead an army of rogues to victory. Hard to question someone's legitimacy when they'd just saved your kingdom. "We owe you an apology," Hrothgar said. His voice was rough, tired. "We doubted. We questioned. We were wrong." "You weren't wrong to question," Seris said. "You were wrong about what mattered. Blood doesn't make someone worthy. Actions do. I've spent my whole life trying to prove I belonged in a pack that would never accept me. Turns out I didn't need to belong there. I just needed to find people who valued the same things I did." She looked around the council chamber, at faces that had been hostile and were now uncertain, learning. "I'm a bastard," she continued, "illegitimate, tainted by whatever standards you use to measure purity. And I'm also your queen. Both things are true. The question is which one matters more to you." The council exchanged glances. Then Hrothgar stood. "With all due respect, Your Majesty," he said, "we don't care who your father was. We care that you stood on those battlements and refused to run when running would have saved you. We care that you spared your sister when killing her would have been easier. We care that you're everything your predecessor king worked his whole life to become. Noble without being weak, strong without being cruel." He knelt, one knee on the stone floor, head bowed. "We serve the Nightfall Dominion, and we serve its queen." One by one, the other council members knelt, pledging loyalty not to bloodlines or legacy, to character. To the woman who'd survived execution and exile and come out the other side still choosing mercy. Seris felt something crack in her chest, not breaking, opening. All the walls she'd built to survive hostile environments crumbling because they weren't needed anymore. She'd spent 23 years trying to earn acceptance from people who would never give it. Turned out acceptance from the right people was the only kind that mattered. Evelyn was brought before them in chains, not silver, just iron, enough to hold but not torture. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The white dress was gone, replaced with prisoner gray. Her face was bruised, broken. She didn't look up when the guards brought her in. "What do you want to do with her?" Draven asked Seris quietly. It was her decision, her sister, her judgment. Seris looked at Evelyn, at the woman who'd lied and schemed and tried to have her executed, who'd been shaped by the same toxic system but chose to perpetuate it instead of escape it. "Exile," Seris said. "Strip her of rank and titles. Send her to the borders. Let her survive the way rogues survive. See how she does when the system isn't protecting her." Evelyn's head snapped up. "Exile is a death sentence." "Then survive it," Seris said. "The way I survived your lies. The way thousands of rogues survive every day in a world built to exclude them. You wanted me dead for being born wrong. Now you get to live knowing you're the one who doesn't belong." It was crueler than execution, kinder too. Death was escape. Exile was consequence, having to live with what you'd done, having to face yourself without the armor of status and privilege. Evelyn was dragged out, still silent, still diminished. Seris watched her go and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no grief. Just the quiet certainty that some chapters had to end before new ones could begin. The fortress rebuilt. Stronger this time. The rogue army didn't disperse. Most stayed, asked for citizenship, for sanctuary, for the chance to belong to something that valued them. The Nightfall Dominion doubled in size over the next month. New structures, new training yards, new lives beginning in the spaces violence had carved out. Seris stood on the battlements one evening, watching the sun set over the valley, watching people move through the streets below, building, living, choosing hope over fear. Draven appeared beside her, silent as always. He'd gotten good at that, being present without demanding attention. "Regrets?" he asked. "About which part?" Seris asked. "The execution? The war? Finding out my entire identity was built on lies?" "Any of it," Draven said. Seris thought about it. Really thought. About the execution stone, about kneeling in chains, about the moment she'd looked up and seen Draven riding through smoke like salvation wearing a crown. "No," she said finally. No regrets. Every terrible thing led me here, led me to you, led me to becoming someone I actually respect instead of someone trying to earn respect from people who'd never give it. She turned to face him. The mate bond hummed between them. Steady, sure, permanent. What about you? She asked. Do you regret saving me? Every day, Draven said. His face was serious. Seris felt her heart stop. Then Draven smiled. Small and genuine and full of warmth. I regret that you had to suffer, that I couldn't get there sooner, that you spent 23 years in a place that didn't deserve you. But saving you? Bringing you here? Loving you? Those are the only decisions I've made that I'm absolutely certain were right. He pulled out a box. Small, black. Opened it to reveal the moonstone ring he'd been carrying for 3 years. I was going to wait, he said. Do this properly, with ceremony and witnesses and all the formal nonsense queens deserve. But I've learned that waiting for perfect moments means missing real ones. He took her hand, slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Marry me, he said. Not because the bond demands it, not because tradition requires it, because I love you and I want to spend whatever time we have building something better than the world we inherited. Seris looked at the ring, at Draven, at the kingdom spread below them, at the future unfolding like a map she finally had permission to explore. Yes, she said. Simple, certain, the easiest decision she'd ever made. Draven kissed her, gentle and fierce. Promise and passion, the beginning of something that would last longer than either of them. Below, the fortress continued its evening routines, people cooking, training, laughing, living lives they'd chosen instead of lives they'd been assigned. This was what kingdoms were supposed to be. Not hierarchies built on blood and fear, communities built on mutual protection and shared values. Places where being thrown away meant you got to choose who you became instead of having it decided for you. The wedding happened a month later. Not in a grand hall with formal witnesses. In the courtyard, under the full moon, surrounded by rogues and refugees and everyone who'd been told they didn't matter and proved the world wrong. Mara officiated. She'd survived the betrayal, wore her scars like badges, spoke words about commitment and choice, and the difference between destiny and decision. Seris wore black, not white. White was for innocence and purity and lies about both. Black was for survival, for strength earned through suffering, for refusing to be what others demanded. Draven wore black too, king and queen in matching armor, ready for whatever came next. The vows were simple, no flowery promises, no impossible guarantees, just honesty. I promise to stand with you, Draven said, in war and peace, in triumph and failure, when the world makes sense and when it doesn't. I promise to trust your judgment even when I disagree, to support your growth even when it's uncomfortable, to love you not despite your flaws, but because they make you real. I promise to choose you, Seris said, every day, even when it's hard, even when easier options exist. I promise to challenge you when you're wrong, to support you when you're right, to build something with you that's worth defending, to be your equal instead of your subject, to love you with the same fierceness you showed when you saved me from execution. They sealed it with a kiss. The mate bond flared bright, permanent, unbreakable. The courtyard erupted, cheering, howling, the sound of a community celebrating not just a wedding, but a victory. Proof that different was possible, that better was achievable, that throwing away the old rules didn't mean chaos, it meant freedom. Later, in their private chambers, Seris and Draven stood by the window, looking out at the kingdom they'd built through blood and choice. What do you think happens now? Seris asked. Now we govern, Draven said. Deal with trade disputes and border conflicts and all the tedious minutiae of empire. Argue with the council, make mistakes, learn from them, build something that lasts longer than us. Sounds exhausting, Seris said. It will be, Draven agreed. Also necessary. Also worth it. He turned to face her, took both her hands. You asked me once why I saved you, he said. I told you it was about redemption, about saving someone when I couldn't save that woman my father executed. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. What's the whole truth? Seris asked. I saved you because the moment I saw you kneeling there waiting to die, I saw the future, Draven said. Saw what you could become if someone gave you the chance. Saw what we could build together. Saw the possibility of something better than the kingdom I inherited. He squeezed her hands. You weren't a victim I rescued. You were a queen waiting to be recognized. I just helped you see it. Seris felt tears build. Not sad ones, the kind that came from being understood completely, from finding someone who saw you clearly and chose you anyway. Thank you, she whispered. For what? Draven asked. For refusing to let me die quietly, Seris said, for believing I was worth the chaos, for teaching me that strength isn't about dominating others. It's about knowing when to fight and when to show mercy. That's not strength, Draven said. That's wisdom. And you taught me as much as I taught you. They stood there as the moon tracked across the sky, as the kingdom settled into sleep, as the future waited to be written. There would be more wars, more challenges, more moments where they'd have to choose between what was easy and what was right. Power always came with prices. Crowns always demanded pieces of the soul, but they'd face it together, not as king and subject, as equals, as partners who'd chosen each other freely and promised to keep choosing each other no matter what came. That was the real victory, not the battles won or the enemies defeated, the choice, the daily decision to build something better instead of perpetuating something broken. 5 years later, Seris stood in the council chamber. Pregnant. 7 months. The heir was coming. A new generation born from a bastard and a king who'd decided blood didn't determine worth. The council was debating expansion, whether to absorb smaller territories struggling under corrupt leadership, whether intervention was justice or imperialism. They're suffering, one council member said. Their alpha tortures dissenters, executes anyone who questions authority. We have a moral obligation to intervene. We also have an obligation not to become conquerors, another countered. The moment we start invading territories to impose our values, we become the tyrants we claim to oppose. The debate raged. Seris listened, learning, growing, understanding that leadership wasn't about having all the answers. It was about asking better questions. What does the affected population want? She finally asked. The council turned to her. We're debating whether to intervene, Seris continued, but we haven't asked whether they want our intervention. Rescue only works when the rescued actually want to be saved. Otherwise, it's just invasion with better marketing. The council went silent. Processing. Send diplomats, Seris said. Open communication. Offer sanctuary to anyone who wants to flee. But don't invade unless they explicitly ask for help. We're not saviors. We're an alternative. The difference matters. Hrothgar nodded slowly. Wise counsel, Your Majesty. The meeting adjourned. Seris walked through the fortress, hand on her swollen belly. Feeling the air move. Kick. Prepare for a world that would be complicated and difficult and hopefully better than the one she'd been born into. Draven found her in the gardens. Kissed her. Ran his hand over her stomach. Council go well? He asked. We avoided starting a war, Seris said. I'm calling that a victory. Smart woman I married, Draven said. Smart man who married me, Seris countered. They walked through the gardens together, talking about nothing and everything, planning for the future, dealing with the present, learning that happiness wasn't a destination, it was a practice, a choice made daily, sometimes hourly, especially when leadership demanded pieces of your soul and crowds demanded perfection you couldn't provide. But they'd survived worse. They'd survived this too. That was the lesson Seris had learned kneeling in chains waiting to die. Survival wasn't about being unbreakable. It was about breaking and putting yourself back together, again and again, until the scars became strength and the wounds became wisdom. She was a bastard, an exile, a refugee who'd become a queen, and she was exactly where she belonged. Not because of destiny or blood or fate, because she'd chosen it, fought for it, built it with her own scarred hands and stubborn refusal to accept that some people were born lesser. The moon rose over the Nightfall Dominion, full and bright, indifferent as always. But beneath it, in a fortress built by refugees and rogues and everyone the world had thrown away, people lived, loved, chose hope over fear, chose building over destroying, chose better. And that, Seris thought, as Draven's hand found hers, was the only victory that mattered. Not conquering, not dominating, not proving you were stronger than your enemies. Just being better than the cruelty that shaped you, creating spaces where others could do the same. Everything else was just noise. The real power was choosing mercy when vengeance was easier, choosing principle when pragmatism was safer, choosing love when fear was more familiar. That was how you built kingdoms worth inheriting, one choice at a time, one day at a time, together.